For most of my adult life, I believed secrets survived best when they were buried beneath routine, hidden under schedules, polite smiles, and the quiet choreography of marriage. For 7 years, my world ran like clockwork. Up at 6. Coffee, no sugar. Office before 9. Home by 7. Dinner beside my wife. Sleep. Repeat. From the outside, I was reliable to the point of invisibility. The kind of man no one looked at twice. Dependable. Predictable. Forgettable. My name is Ethan, and for a long time, I mistook being unseen for being safe. I worked as an accounts manager at a logistics company downtown. Numbers were comforting. They followed rules. If something didn't add up, you traced it back, corrected it, restored balance. Spreadsheets didn't judge. They didn't wonder whether the person typing into them felt miscast in his own life. And I didn't, at least not in the way people expect. There were no childhood confessions, no stolen dresses, no secret fascination with lipstick or high heels. I hadn't grown up dreaming of another reflection staring back at me. Everything was ordinary. Until Mia. Mia was precision wrapped in elegance, sharp without cruelty, confident without volume. She could walk into a room and quietly rearrange its gravity. While I disappeared into walls, she reshaped spaces around her. She worked in branding, reading people, adjusting narratives, refining images until they aligned with something sharper, stronger. We met at a dinner party. She noticed me immediately, not because I was loud, but because I wasn't. She pointed out the way I listened more than I spoke. How I softened disagreements instead of challenging them. How I shifted myself to fit whatever dynamic surrounded me. "You're sensitive," she told me once. I called it survival. In the beginning, we fit together like two halves of a system. She made decisions. I supported them. She navigated. I complied. I convinced myself it was partnership, not imbalance. Every ship needs someone at the helm, right? But leadership can quietly become control. It started with teasing. "You'd look better if you put more effort in," she'd say, smoothing my collar. "You're too rigid," she'd murmur. "You need softness." I laughed along. That was my role. Our home reflected her aesthetic. Muted colors, soft lighting, carefully placed decor. And mirrors. So many mirrors. At first, I thought they were decorative tricks to make the rooms appear larger. Eventually, I began avoiding my own reflection. The shift began one evening while she reorganized our closet. I was half distracted on the bed when she turned toward me, holding a silk blouse, ivory, light as breath. "Try this," she said. I assumed it was a joke. She didn't smile. The air changed. The silence felt deliberate, not playful, measured. "Just once," she insisted. I declined gently. She didn't argue. She folded it away with quiet composure. But that night, lying beside her in the dark, I felt watched, assessed. After that, the commentary sharpened. "You give up control too easily," she said after I described a frustrating day at work. "You're always apologizing," she observed another time. "You don't even realize you're doing it." She began framing her remarks as concern, guidance, improvement. "You need structure," she told me. "You need direction." And the unsettling truth was, I didn't entirely disagree. I had always felt like I'd inherited a role instead of choosing one. Husband. Professional. Man. The expectations sat on me like a jacket tailored for someone broader, louder, more certain. I wasn't weak, but I was exhausted from pretending to be strong. The night everything tipped beyond return, Mia entered the bedroom carrying a small pink box, wrapped neatly, deliberately. "This isn't a joke," she said evenly. "And it's not optional." My pulse thudded in my ears. I hadn't opened it yet, but something inside me already understood. Whether it was danger or desire, I couldn't tell. Only that it mattered. "You trust me, don't you?" she asked. There was a pause, barely a second, but it was enough. I nodded. Her smile wasn't cruel. It wasn't triumphant. It was satisfied, like a scientist confirming a hypothesis after years of quiet research. "Good," she whispered. "Then we can fix this." I stood there, box in hand, surrounded by mirrors reflecting versions of myself I no longer recognized. In that moment, I didn't realize I was stepping across a threshold. I thought I was agreeing to change. I didn't yet understand I was surrendering control. Beneath the fear coiled in my ribs, beneath the confusion and the quiet pressure building behind my thoughts, something else moved. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. But it was there, restless, curious, waiting for light. The box remained unopened for 2 days. Mia never mentioned it again. No reminders. No smirks. No ultimatums. That restraint was more suffocating than any argument we'd ever had. The small pink package sat on the dresser like a silent witness. Every time I walked into the bedroom, my gaze drifted toward it against my will. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a decision waiting to be made. On the third night, Mia shut the bedroom door and turned the lock. The click echoed in my chest. "Sit," she said. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. I sat before I consciously chose to. She stood in front of me, arms folded, studying me the way she evaluated campaigns or clients, analytical, detached. "You think this is about clothes," she said evenly. "It isn't." My throat felt tight. "Then what is it?" "Control," she replied without hesitation. "And honesty." She picked up the box and set it in my lap. "Open it." The lid lifted easily. Inside lay neatly folded fabric, a pale pink skirt, matching underwear, a pair of stockings sealed in thin plastic. Nothing dramatic. Nothing exaggerated. Ordinary. That made it worse. "This stays in the house," she continued. "This is about you understanding yourself." "I'm not," I began. She held up a finger. "Not yet," she corrected gently. "But you're closer than you think." The words settled over me like a weight. She moved slowly around the chair, her steps unhurried. "You give away authority everywhere else," she said. "At work. With friends. Even with me. You make yourself smaller so other people don't have to." She stopped behind me, resting her hands on my shoulders. "This," she said, indicating the clothes, "just makes it visible." My heart pounded hard enough to make my vision blur. I told myself I was avoiding conflict, keeping peace, choosing the easiest path. Like always, I stood. The air felt thick as I undressed. I could feel her eyes on me, not mocking, not desirous, measuring, waiting. When I stepped into the skirt, my hands trembled so badly she reached forward to steady the fabric. The material brushed against my legs, light, unfamiliar. The waistband settled into place with a softness that felt both wrong and strangely fitting. I exhaled sharply. The stockings were worse. Pulling them up forced an awareness I wasn't prepared for. Every inch erased the distance I'd always maintained from my own body. There was no autopilot, no numbness. "Look," she said quietly. I turned to the mirror. The reflection startled me. My face unchanged. My posture uncertain. The clothes reframed everything. It was disorienting, like seeing a version of myself I'd edited out long ago. I let out a strained laugh. "This is absurd." Mia stepped behind me, her reflection aligning with mine. "No," she said softly. This is honest. She adjusted the hem, smoothing it into place with careful hands. From now on, she continued, when you're home alone, this is how you dress. My stomach dropped. What if someone sees? She met my eyes in the mirror. Fear teaches discipline. And just like that, it became law. The next morning she left before sunrise. The house felt cavernous after the door shut. I stood in the bedroom for a long time, staring at the folded clothes waiting on the bed. I told myself I didn't have to continue. I told myself I could ignore her rule. I told myself this wasn't me. Then I dressed anyway. The house felt different immediately, quieter, sharper. Every sound seemed amplified. The hum of the refrigerator. A car rolling past outside. Footsteps somewhere upstairs. The skirt shifted when I walked. The stockings clung to my legs with subtle insistence. There was no disappearing into routine, no dissolving into background noise. I was hyper-aware. When I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, I froze. For a moment, I didn't look away. The person staring back at me looked uncertain, but also strangely composed. Not happy, not ashamed, just present, as if the performance had paused. The knock at the door shattered the stillness. 3 firm strikes. My heart slammed into my ribs. Mia wouldn't be home for hours. Ethan, a voice called from the other side. You home? My neighbor. I looked down at myself. There wasn't time to change. Nowhere close enough to hide. Another knock. I know you're in there. I stepped back slowly, pulse roaring in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to tear off the fabric, to bury it in the closet, to restore the version of myself the world recognized. This was what she meant. Fear. Discipline. But as I stood there between the door and the hallway mirror, something colder, and far more unsettling, rose inside me. Part of me wasn't just afraid of being seen. Part of me wondered what it would feel like if I was. The knocking stopped. Silence poured back into the house, heavy and absolute. I stood there trembling, breath shallow. Not because I had been caught, but because I hadn't tried to hide. I hadn't torn the clothes off. I hadn't run. I had simply stood there, frozen, and in that stillness, something reckless surfaced. Ethan, my neighbor called again, closer now. You all right? My throat felt tight. Yeah, just a minute. The sound of my own voice startled me. It came out thinner, tighter than usual. I waited until I heard footsteps retreat down the walkway before I sagged against the wall and stumbled toward the couch. The skirt crumpled awkwardly beneath me as I sat. My palms pressed flat against my thighs, as if I could anchor myself to something solid. This was real. There was no denying it anymore. When Mia came home that evening, she didn't ask about my day. She looked at me, really looked at me, and smiled. You didn't change, she said. It wasn't a question. I swallowed. How would you even know? She set her bag down with quiet precision. I always know, she replied. That's the difference between us. She circled me slowly, her heels tapping a measured rhythm against the floor. Each step felt deliberate, tightening something invisible that had already begun to coil around me. You were frightened today, she said calmly. I let out a brittle laugh. You can't sense fear from across town. No, she agreed. But I can predict you. She stopped in front of me and lifted my chin with 2 fingers. And you didn't stop. That night, the structure deepened. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't shouting. It was organization, schedules, expectations, adjustments delivered with quiet patience. You don't handle choice well, she explained. It overwhelms you. So I'll simplify it. She corrected how I walked, how I sat, how I held my hands. Each lesson was delivered gently, almost clinically, like someone guiding a fragile thing into a new shape. And the mirrors became unavoidable. You glance at yourself and look away too fast, she said one evening, positioning me in front of the full-length mirror. She stood behind me, her hands resting lightly on my shoulders. You're afraid of what happens if you stare. Don't look away. So I didn't. The reflection no longer shocked me. My face was still mine, but my posture had shifted. The clothes didn't feel theatrical anymore. They felt integrated. This is you, Mia murmured. The part that doesn't resist. You're not forcing me, I said, though the words felt hollow. She leaned closer, her reflection aligning with mine in the glass. No, she said softly. I'm removing your excuses. Then came something I hadn't anticipated. A dinner invitation. Her colleagues. Her boss. Casual, she said. Nothing formal. You'll help, she told me, handing me a folded outfit, more refined than the others. Subtle, but unmistakable. My chest tightened. They can't see me like this. They won't, she said. Not the way you think. The house filled with conversation that evening. Laughter echoed down hallways that no longer felt like mine. I moved quietly between rooms, offering drinks, clearing plates, keeping my eyes lowered. Every step felt precarious. Every glance like a threat waiting to materialize. Then I saw it. A mirror placed deliberately near the hallway. Mid-motion, I caught my reflection, and another figure paused behind me. A flicker of confusion crossed their face before it was smoothed away. Across the room, Mia's eyes met mine. For the first time, I sensed something uncertain in her expression. Because standing there, exposed and trembling, I realized something deeper than fear. I wasn't only afraid of being discovered. I was afraid of not being stopped. The evening didn't erupt into chaos. There were no accusations, no dramatic confrontations, just a subtle hesitation in the air. A colleague who frowned briefly before laughing at a joke. Another guest who looked away a second too quickly. No one spoke. But something had shifted. And once something shifts, it doesn't return to its original shape. I retreated to the kitchen, gripping the counter as my reflection stared back at me from the microwave door, warped, fragmented. Mia joined me moments later. You're doing beautifully, she whispered. I searched her face for doubt, for guilt, for any sign that this had gone too far. There was none. Someone noticed, I muttered. Of course they did, she replied lightly. My breath caught. You said. I said they wouldn't see you exactly, she interrupted. And they didn't. She adjusted my sleeve, her touch precise. What they saw, she continued, was obedience. And obedience is invisible unless you're trained to recognize it. The guests left with polite smiles and glances that lingered just a fraction too long. The door closed with a quiet finality. Silence flooded the house. I turned toward her, anger and panic colliding inside me. You planned this. She didn't deny it. I needed to know how far you would go, she said evenly. Now I do. A bitter laugh escaped me. You broke me. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the steadiness of her breathing. No, she said. You stopped breaking yourself. Later, alone in the bedroom, I stood before the mirror longer than ever before. No instructions. No corrections. Just me. The clothes no longer felt like a costume. They felt like a choice, one I didn't remember consciously making, yet one I was living inside. Mia's voice drifted from the doorway. This isn't temporary, she said. Not a threat. A statement. I turned to face her. Is this what you want? She tilted her head thoughtfully. What matters, she said, is what you're willing to become. She left, closing the door softly behind her. I stared at my reflection, caught between resistance and release, between resentment and something dangerously close to relief. And for the first time since this began, I didn't know which future unsettled me more. The one where I fought for control, or the one where I let go.